When we hear the term digital divide, our minds usually jump straight to one thing: who has a computer and who doesn't. But what if that's just scratching the surface? What if the real problem is way, way deeper?
So let me ask you this. In today's world, is just having a laptop really enough to get by, let alone succeed? For years, the big push was just to get a device into everyone's hands. But as more and more of our lives go online, you have to wonder, is a piece of plastic and silicone really the whole story?
Because what we're starting to see is that the real barriers aren't about the hardware at all. They're about something much deeper, a kind of social exclusion that's hiding in plain sight. It's about who gets to build a future in this new world and who gets left behind.
And that's where this quote from Dr. Rony A. Rodas really hits home. He says, digital exclusion isn't just a tech issue, it's a social justice and human rights issue. And that completely reframes the conversation, right? Suddenly, we're not talking about gadgets anymore. We're talking about basic human rights.
So, to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to dive into the work of Dr. Rodas. He's an expert in how humans and technology interact, and his research is a huge deal. He analyzed and pulled together the findings from 150 different studies to give us this incredibly clear map of what digital exclusion actually looks like today.
And what he found is that there are these four massive barriers. It's helpful to think of them as the four walls of exclusion. These are the real obstacles that keep people out, and they go so far beyond just not owning a laptop.
So what are these walls? Well, you've got structural barriers, you've got skills and confidence gaps, there's institutional neglect, and then there's this really fascinating one: psychological disengagement. Let's break each one down. Okay, so wall number one is the one we're probably most familiar with: structural barriers. This is the classic access problem. For a lot of people, especially in low-income or rural areas, the high cost of a good device and reliable, fast internet is just too much. It's the first wall you hit, and for many, it's just too high to climb. But let's say you get over that first wall. That brings us to wall number two: skills and confidence. It's one thing to have a laptop. It's another thing entirely to feel confident using it for complex stuff. We're talking applying for a job, managing your finances, or even just knowing how to spot an online scam. If you don't have that confidence, you just avoid it, and that gap gets wider and wider. The third wall is institutional neglect. This is about the systems that are supposed to be helping us out. Schools, libraries, job centers. The research shows that they often treat digital skills as this little add-on, an afterthought. The funding is almost always short-term, the programs are all over the place, and they just don't provide the kind of long-term, steady support that people actually need to succeed. And all of that leads us to the fourth and maybe the most heartbreaking wall: psychological disengagement. When you've faced setback after setback, or you feel like you're being judged for not knowing things, you can start to internalize this feeling that this whole digital world is, and I'm quoting the research here, just not for people like me. It's a textbook case of learned helplessness, and it's a massive invisible barrier. Now, when you look at the data from all 150 studies, you see that the classic issues, access, and skills, are still the most talked about problems. No surprise there. But look how closely the other two follow. Institutional neglect and psychological disengagement are right behind them. It's super clear that all four of these walls are huge, interconnected problems. So, we've seen the walls. Now let's talk about the bottom line. What's the real cost of being disconnected? What actually happens to people who are stuck on the wrong side of this divide? Well, the consequences are staggering. They touch pretty much every single part of modern life. We're talking about being locked out of the job market because everything's online, kids struggling in school because they can't do their homework, not being able to apply for government benefits, or even get access to your own health records. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a full-on lockout from society. Dr. Rodas's research gives this a name: digital capital. Think of it like a new kind of currency. If you have the skills and the access, you can cash it in for better jobs, better education, more opportunities. But if you don't have it, you just fall further behind, making all the old inequalities even worse. Okay, I know this sounds pretty heavy, but here's the good news. The research doesn't just diagnose the problem. It actually gives us a blueprint for how to fix it. It's time to stop worrying about the walls and start thinking about how we build bridges. So, the research lays out 4 key steps. First, we have to start treating digital literacy like essential infrastructure, every bit as important as roads and bridges. Second, we need to properly fund the places people already trust, like their local libraries, with stable, long-term money. Third, we've got to stop teaching digital skills in a vacuum. Integrate them into everything, job training, school curriculums, you name it. And finally, and this is so important, we have to shift our focus from just teaching people where to click to actually building their confidence.
When you put all this together, you realize this isn't just about a few policy tweaks. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think. Being digitally literate isn't a bonus skill anymore. It's a non-negotiable right for participating in the 21st century.
And this final quote from the research just says it all, doesn't it? Closing the digital literacy gap is not just good technology policy, it is core social policy. This isn't a problem for the IT department to solve. This is a problem for all of us, for society to solve. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. In a world that is literally being rebuilt on a foundation of technology, how do we make absolutely sure that it builds ladders of opportunity for everyone instead of building new invisible walls for some? Thanks for tuning in.